Hey, thanks for staying. And how was that? That's the reaction I expected. Yeah. Sweet. Thanks, Matt, for coming back. We've had quite the evening.
I know, we've watched a lot of movies. We did the intros and Q&As for 3 different movies today.
Yeah.
This is the last one. If you guys want to leave, you better leave now, because I don't know how long this is going to go on for. I'm serious, and you won't offend anybody. I've screened this film at film festivals about 100 times, and I watched all kinds of audiences walk out and be like, what a piece of shit. I'll tell you one funny story. I'm screening this movie, I was quite young, right? And it's at the Sarasota Film Festival, and that's a place in Florida. This is a geriatric population. And it's the place that invented the circus, okay? So the circus was invented in this place. And they had quite an elite film festival back in like 2013, 2014. And I was so happy to go. But the crowd is very, very old, as I said. And so they screened the movie, and this is back when I would never introduce the film because I was self-conscious about acting in the movie, and I thought it would give people the wrong impression, right? Like, I thought it was better for them not to know that I was acting in the movie. Anyway, the film ends, and I go up to do the Q&A, and it's all these quite old people, and they see me, and they gasp. And I'm like, whoa, oh my God. And then one woman shouts, like says out loud, "Shouldn't you be in prison?" Which I didn't begrudge her, but I'll never forget that. "Shouldn't you be in prison? That was horrible what you did."
Why would a film festival show us documentary like this?
And then to have you here, no less. Awful! Oh, you know, what terrible.
Oh man. I mean, it's 10 years since the film played the Slam Dance. I mean, probably longer than that since it's been in your... Since you made it and all that stuff. I mean,
Well, I made it when I was
yeah.
quite a bit younger than that, actually, because this movie, when you make your first movie, it takes a long time. So I had graduated from film school, and then I'd made a web series for a few years, I think maybe 2 or 3 years. And then I started shooting this movie when I was maybe... It was in my early 20s, but we shot it on and off for so long, and then I edited it for maybe a year and a half. So it was probably 3 years, all said and done, that I was working on this movie before it was released. And it's another testament to First Features. The movie was so bad. And I don't mean that modestly. It was so bad right into the last minute. It was so hard to get right. We shot so much footage. And what I realized was that we would go out and shoot stuff at high schools or things like that, and 99% of what we shot would just be awful. Like, it wouldn't work. I'd be bad, Owen would be bad, we wouldn't have good coverage. We had no idea what we were doing. Like, we were not filmmakers. We really had no clue what we were doing. And so most of what we shot was useless. And so we'd need to shoot sometimes 2-3 days just to get like a minute or 2 minutes of stuff that would work, or that would meet our standards. Because what I realized in a painful way is that my taste for what like I thought was acceptable work was at a certain level, and I bet you if there's any artists in here, you have this same problem. And it's something that I once heard Ira Glass talk about. This problem that all artists have when they're starting is that your taste is typically quite elite. Like, you probably have a very solid sense of what you like, what works for you, what's good, but your craft really will not meet your taste. You know what I mean? Like, there's a real disparity between these two, and the adventure of getting your craft up to a level where it actually meets your own taste of what you will accept as good work is very painful. It's extremely painful. And for my friends and I, it again like took us years before we even be able to shoot something that I thought was acceptable, that was good enough for us to put in a movie. I mean, obviously for me it was worth it, but it was a very painful experience. Very painful experience.
Yeah. And I guess in terms of, you know, it's been 10 years since the film came out now. I mean, what's just kind of, I mean, you were saying just before we came in that you haven't seen it since.
No, the last time I saw this film was at the world premiere.
Yeah. So, from what you kind of remember and think about the film, and what and everything that's happened in 10 years since in the world, how do you feel this film kind of, you know, stands in this current climate now? Like,
I have no idea. I mean, that's not for me to judge. I know that for young people or for people in film school, it's inspirational because it's so obvious how we made it, and that I love about this movie. A lot of my early work, I think, contains in it the instructions on how to make movies, which I think is I didn't realize it at the time, obviously, but when I think back on how we made the movie and now what it seems to mean when people talk to me about it, it's like it contains within it instructions on how to do it yourself. Because lots of young filmmakers will see this movie and then think, or just say to me openly, oh, I'm going to make a movie like that, or I want to make a movie just like that. Because we make it seem quite easy, right? It's like, oh, you just go to your school and film and act stupid and it'll be funny and it'll work. And yeah, there's a real collision with reality, I think, when people go to try to do that, because that's what I thought would happen, and really the ability to hold an audience's attention using footage of anything really is so limited, and you have to, it's things you can't even teach. It's like you need to, well, find all these tricks that you can only learn by doing it. But I really do appreciate that it's been able to, I mean, maybe inspire people to try to make movies like this in this style. Because it's a style I really, really like, and I think it's very underutilized. Like the notion of the fake documentary, like something that seems low stakes, like when you're watching it, like, oh, this is shit. Like, it just looks like some stupid people who don't know what they're doing are making it. And that, in some ways, especially now, if you see my work these days, it's very by design. Like, I'm trying to make movies that, as an audience, you watch, and they lower your expectations, but they also lower your guard, because there's nothing, I don't want to say pretentious, but nothing that's like too slick about them. So they seem approachable, and you can, as an audience, you can sit back and be like, oh, well, I'm smarter than the person who made this, so I can sit and watch it and see what happens. And then that allows the film to kind of play games with you and make you question, well, how did they do that, knowing that they have no resources, and I've already decided they're stupid. Do you know what I mean by that? I don't mean stupid in the sense that, like, these people have a low IQ. I mean stupid in the sense that they clearly aren't putting any effort into this, right? And if you make your audiences think you're putting no effort into what you're doing, as soon as you do something miraculous, it really takes them by surprise. And that's something that I learned in a big way making the TV show that I made right after this, well, a little bit after this, and that's so thrilling. Because my favorite moment as an audience sitting in a movie theater is when I'm watching a movie and I go, I no longer know what I'm watching. It like takes my breath away. And I start watching the film at a meta level where I'm engaged with the process of making the movie more than I am with the story. And that's something that cinema can do that no other medium can do, where you get to engage in a parallel timeline with the construction of the film itself, which I find so exciting. Like it's my favorite thing.
I think
actually, never mind. Magic also can do that. If you're watching a magician, then it's the only other art form that does that, where you're not only watching the trick, but you are simultaneously engaged with the process of how the trick is happening, which is so fun, right? And so yeah. Sorry.
No, that's good. I think, especially with a film like this, a lot of people haven't seen it before. It's the first time. I'd like to open up to audience questions. I think Matt will have a lot of really enjoys hearing from you guys. Does anyone have a question? Please raise your hand, and we've not got a mic, but it's fine. Just shout. This chap here. Let's go.
Hello. Yeah, I have a question that's kind of to do with this film, but also all of your work. So, because of the way you work, how do you kind of figure out the casting process for the people that you have performing in the film? Because obviously some of that must be predetermined, and then there's just the randomers that kind of get involved off the off chance. So kind of what is your approach for that?
When I first started, the idea was that I never wanted to work with actors at all, because I all my experiences were so bad. I think one of the big things that holds back student films is that as audiences, you always know when somebody's an actor, and you always know when somebody's bad. It's like people don't realize it, but let's say aliens invaded and they needed human beings to do jobs for their planet. All of you would be the absolute best at identifying other human beings. We're so good at it. We're so good at knowing when somebody's a human. It's almost like our best skill, actually. And when somebody's acting slightly not human, we all know. Everybody's an expert at acting, right? And I don't mean to say that they're good at telling when somebody's lying. I mean to say they're good at telling when somebody's acting bad. We all know, and even if we don't have the sophistication to say, oh, this is bad acting because of this, we just know there's something sickening and revolting about it. And I had experienced so much of that in film school that I just thought, I'm never going to work with actors. I thought they all sucked because I was exposed to just like small student actors, right? And so my goal was to only have real people in movies that didn't know they were on camera. Because I found that if I filmed people secretly, they were incredible, right? Like any of you, you don't realize it, but if you were on camera not knowing it, you would be doing like an Oscar-winning performance of yourself. Like Oscar-winning. People would be like, nobody could do that but them. Literally. And it's why I started using cameras that had really long zoom lenses and wireless microphones, because I mean, my mom is in this movie, and let me tell you, my mom is here in Scotland right now, and if I was like, hey mom, I need you to act in this scene where I come up and say I'm crazy, here are your lines, it would be a disaster, it'd be awful. Like she'd bomb so bad, it'd be humiliating. But you see her now, I go up and I'm saying this stuff, she's incredible, she's crazy, she's so good. I watch her, I'm like, well, that's like better acting than I see in most movies, but it's just because she's being herself. Now that I'm making movies on a larger scale, it's harder, because to get trained actors who are really, really talented to get behind that philosophy, especially to get them to act with non-actors or with real people, that can be hard. So how I approach casting is first by making sure me and whoever I'm working with are on the same page about what it is that we're doing, and then shooting tons and tons and tons of takes, like shooting as much as we can with 2 cameras at the same time, so that even if on the day something isn't working or the performance isn't exactly where it should be, Kurt and I and Bobby can basically manipulate it into anything we want in the edit. Because if you shoot enough of anybody, even if they aren't great, you can turn it into something usable. But you need to shoot a lot. You need to shoot a lot.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions at the moment? We'll go up the back, the blonde here, and then we'll move over.
Yeah, you couldn't hear you asking about how we filmed in these schools. And it's in the intro I alluded to this, which is that I don't think I could make this movie if I was any older than I was, because the way we shot in these schools is we just went into them and started filming. Like there's no trick to it. Like we would have our cameras, there's only 4 of us, right? 2 cameras, me and Owen. That's the whole team, that's our entire crew, right? So there's Jared Rabb, Evan Morgan, me, and Owen. And, you know, we're dressed like students, our cameras are really small, we don't have any crew with us. In Canada, like, it's not like there's no guns in Canada, really, like, so we could just walk into high schools and start shooting. And we'd get thrown out eventually, right? It's not like it was just utopia. We could be there, join classes, and shoot as much as we wanted. But we could shoot enough before we would get caught, or before people would figure out that we weren't students. And we would normally shoot in high schools that had like 1,000+ students, so we'd blend in, and we would just shoot as much as we could until we couldn't shoot there anymore. That's not how we shot the ending, though. Like the ending, we rented a school on the weekend. But I was just saying this in the hallway because I'd forgotten it. We told the school we were going to do this, and they were like, yes, you can do that, no problem. They understood what we were doing, that we were making a movie, and they were supportive. But what they didn't tell us is that the day that we were shooting, Chinese school was in, and so there was a full-on school in operation while we were trying to shoot a school shooting. And we got there and there was nobody in charge. It was just like a bunch of random classes of people learning Mandarin. And so we're like, well, we gotta just go. So we shot that, and you see like there's some confusion amongst certain people. It didn't seem like, I mean, you saw it. We only were able to shoot that scene like I think twice or maybe 3. I think we only got to do 3 takes of it because it's one shot. And it wasn't too disruptive, but certainly it was like a unique day for those students who were there. This is not normal. Yeah.
We'll go to the chap in the back there as well. Is that the same question? Sweet. We'll where do we go again? We'll go for this chap here. Yeah.
Hi, I was just wondering, obviously, you've been working with the kind of same core crew of people
Mhm.
like Jay and Jared and kind of Owen and some of your stuff as well. I was just wondering, like 10 years on from that, how do you feel about having managed to do that, the fact that you've had your friends and managed to make it work?
Yeah, the question was about always working with my friends and what that's been like for 10 years. And it's been really challenging. In fact, most of my work deals with that tension. The Dirties, my second film, Operation Avalanche, and very much the film that I just released, is about what happens when you work with your friends trying to do something that you yourself think is really important, but they are in a different position than you on it, because it can be quite painful. The Dirties, when we made it, remember, like, we were all like nobodies, and we made the movie for no money, and it was just really 5 or 6 of us working all the time trying to make this, and we were really kind of all at the same level. And then when the film kind of became a success, I got a lot of attention, and my friends didn't really get any, because the way the filmmaking world works is that it's so director-philic that that's the only person who really gets any attention, or actors. And in this case, I was both. And that led to some really major challenges, not only for the friendships that I had with these people, but also for what working together in the future was going to be. And it was the most difficult time in my life when this film was becoming a success, because it changed these friendships so quickly, almost overnight, in a way that I wasn't prepared for. And I was so immature, I was so young, that I didn't really have the psychological sophistication to even untangle it. I was just, my life was changing so fast, and I shouldn't get into it, but it was quite painful. But the fact that I was able to preserve as many of those relationships as I did, and that we continue to work together, has put me in a position where I can keep making films the way I want to. Because let's say that after the Dirties, Jared was just like, you know what? You're an asshole, I'm never going to talk to you again. I'd be in a lot of trouble, because the style and the language that he and I have developed is kind of irreplaceable. Like, I would work with him on projects like this before I'd work with, the top cinematographers in the entire world, just because the shorthand that we have and the way that we talk about shooting, you couldn't replicate with all the money in the world. And I like that. I like making movies that generally audiences watch and they're like, if you don't understand what I'm doing, you're like, this sucks and this guy's an idiot, right? Which is a reaction I get most of the time, right? Most audiences, especially when they watch this, they're like, well, this is just ridiculous. But I like that there's a certain audience that sees this and gets what my friends and I are trying to do and appreciates it. And I couldn't do that if I was working with normal professionals who weren't my close friends. It would be impossible. It'd be impossible, because you'd explain what you want and they'd be like, well, that's a mistake, and you can't shoot a movie that way. And if you do that, you'll fail. And so yeah, it's unfortunate. It means I've really put myself in a corner, because now when I go to make movies, it's like I need to kind of either evolve this same style or just make things constantly in the same style. So, I mean, it's good and bad, but I really like it, and I'm really happy with the way things have gone in the last 10 years.
Okay, was there a question here? Yeah.
The scene that you have in Nirvana Band the Show, where you're almost filming the Dirties as well, was that filmed at the same time?
No, this was the timelines are way off. He's asking, there's a scene in the TV show I make, Nirvana the Band, where we go into a school and shoot a school shooting movie that then gets into Sundance. But that was shot maybe 5 years later, and in that episode we were trying to combine all the work we'd ever done into one thing. We shoot a school shooting movie in a high school, call it Operation Avalanche, get it into Sundance, and go to Sundance to with the movie. But that was really a collision of all the work that we were doing at the same time. So no, the timelines was way later, way later. But it was the same tricks, and it was an homage to this movie. That's why we did it. This is the kind of self-congratulatory nonsense that I put into all my work, where I'm sure a lot of you were hearing that being like, what the hell is he talking about? But my friends and I really like that kind of stuff. We think it's so naughty.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, yeah.
Sweet. Go for this chap here. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about you mentioned briefly about the legal clearance and all of that, and I mean, and we know how much work it goes to making the film. Was it worth it? Like how much stuff you have to do after the film is finished to get it legally to be able to screen?
This film was really interesting because when I made it, I did not understand what you could and couldn't legally put in a movie. And so there's so many posters and so much music and so many real people who didn't know they were on camera. And I was like, it'll be fine. And thank God I was so ignorant, because if I had been worried about those things, this movie would never have been made. And because I approached it with it'll work itself out, it'll be fine. Here's what happened, okay? This movie played at a film festival in the United States, and it won that film festival. And because it won, there was a lot of attention on it to get sold and to be put in theaters. And what I didn't realize, and what I've come to realize now, and what I tell all young filmmakers when they ask me about this, is you don't need to worry about any of this stuff until people are trying to actively sell or do something with your movie. And then they will solve these problems for you. Because it really is not a filmmaker's job to self-censor themselves based on what they think is legally allowed. And I think that that's actually a great model for telling stories, for being an artist. It's like, it's hard. And you should be focused on doing the best work possible. Like, what is the best work for you? And oftentimes what I see film students doing is either self-censoring or putting barriers in front of themselves that they think are important to be professional, right? Or to be serious, or to do something legally. And a lot of those things are kind of illusions. Specifically in this movie, like, we use so much footage from real movies and posters and comic books and all this kind of stuff. And the lawyers who were helping us release the film basically made an argument that all of this stuff was inherently relevant to the cultural critique that the movie was making, which is that these characters are very soaked in this culture, and from that they are exploring identity through movies and culture, etc. And so there's I talked about this in another screening, and maybe I shouldn't retread it, but basically there is a law in North America and in your country as well called fair use, and here it's called fair dealing, that allows artists to do things with copyright, with real people, with the real world, basically, provided they're making a point about that thing. And that gives filmmakers a lot of freedom in terms of what they can put in movies. But the problem is, most professional filmmakers are one, too afraid of doing this, but more likely they're too under the thumb of their producers, who are not interested in dealing with the law in this way, because it is a challenge and you do have to be kind of canny about it. And if you're ever dealing with a lawyer or a producer and you're a young filmmaker, they are never going to want to do more work than they have to, ever. And I think that in some ways is what's keeping down a lot of this style of work, where it's shot in the real world, real people, real stuff, real movies, just because it's a little bit more work. And the term "a little bit more work" is not something producers want to hear. They want to do a little bit less work, right? Like, that's an ideal situation for most film producers. How can I do a little bit less? Which is too bad.
I think we've got time for one more. Let's do one more. Let's go down to the front.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to refrain from commenting about how you're wearing sweatpants.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I'll tell you something about sweatpants, okay? So it's a true story. Ryan Gahuli did tell me sweatpants were out when I was in the arcade at Erin Mills, senior public school. I was in grade 6, and I was in the arcade playing X-Men versus Street Fighter. And he went, "Johnson, sweatpants are out." It broke my heart. I was like, I didn't know. My mom was still buying my clothes at this period of my life from a store called the Price Club. And I had Ninja Teddy sweatpants. And I didn't know it wasn't cool. You gotta remember, a year ago, I had just been in grade 5. Okay? And in grade 5, you're still like, puberty's a long way away, and the boys and girls are the same. And Ninja Teddy sweatpants were great, but then grade 6 like landed on me like a ton of bricks, and everybody's having sex, and I was looking around like, what the hell happened? And I was a late bloomer. Anyway, I quickly got the memo and got jeans. But now as an adult, I have really rediscovered sweatpants in a big way. Like, if you ask Carly, she's like, I wear sweatpants every day. And I did not intend my life to be this way. Like, it's not like I was like, oh, I made a movie where I took a stand on sweatpants, and now I'm gonna wear them all the time. It just happened because I have an athleisure sensibility, and I like being able to move. And I don't see the problem. And you know what? When I was a kid, my dad took me into the office and was like, he goes, take your kid to work day. And he was like, you gotta cut your hair and you gotta dress different. And I was like, what? I was a kid, and he got like bangs on my hair. I looked like a squire. And I cried. I was in grade 7 or something like that. You should have seen these bangs. They were humiliating. And I made a vow at that time that I would find a job where I could dress however I wanted. And I am stuck to that in a big way. And now when it's like people tell me I gotta dress a certain way, I just laugh in their face. And I'm like, no, I don't. I can do whatever I want now, Dad.
And you are doing whatever you want now.
Yeah, mostly, yeah. There's certainly things I can't do,
Well,
like in my films.
Awesome. Well, I mean,
What, that
wasn't her
that wasn't the
question.
question.
Yeah.
That wasn't her question. Sorry, what was the question?
No, I was wondering like why all of your films have kind of a similar theme of like ambition going wrong, and why that is.
This question, if you couldn't hear, is why all my movies are dealing with ambition going wrong. I will tell you something. I think all my movies are about ambition going right.
Really?
Yes. I mean, I haven't watched this movie in 10 years. I haven't watched Operation Avalanche since we made it, thank God. And the only thing I can rewatch is Nirvana Band the Show episodes because I think they're so funny. But my opinion on these characters, including Jim in Blackberry, is that these guys all did great. I remember thinking this movie was like this was a hero story. I'm watching Maddie goes in, he got what he wanted. He's not upset at the end. He's like, oh yeah, Owen I guess doesn't recognize me, but otherwise this was a good day for him. And I know that may sound crazy, and of course it doesn't really map to reality, but I think these characters in some way are heroic because they really wanted something and they went for it, and if you ask them in the moment, at the final moments of the movie, basically wherever I cut to credits on any of them, like, are you happy? They'd all say yes. They'd all be like, yep, this is what I wanted. They all got what they wanted. And sure, there's some disappointment to it. I mean, Matt's definitely going to jail here, but he would go to jail with a confused look on his face. And to me, that's a kind of victory for him. And yeah, I to answer your question more seriously, I think it's because I think as a young person, I had a lot of ambition to do really big things and just, I don't know, like the same things that a lot of young people think where it's like, I'm going to go do something great. And I would witness over and over again my own failure at this. And I would fail at everything I did. Even this film was a huge failure for me for years and years. My shows have been failures, and all my movies at some level have been failures. And in trying to get them out was a big failure. And then I heard this story, and it's a myth of this guy named Gilgamesh. And I'll tell it to you very briefly because all of a sudden my whole life clicked into perspective for me. And here's what happened to this guy, okay? He's an old guy. And he was the king of some kind of kingdom somewhere, and his best friend died. Like, God came and killed his best friend, and he was like, oh, this sucks. I want to live forever. And so he leaves his kingdom where he's the king, and he goes out on this journey to try to figure out how to live forever. And he meets all of these spirits and people, and they all give him these challenges. And they're like, oh, you want to live forever? Here's what you got to do. You got to not sleep for 1 week. And he tries, and then he can only stay awake for like 2 days. And they're like, oh, you failed. And then another one is like, you got to hold your breath for a certain amount of time. I mean, I'm butchering because I don't know it that well. But then there's this other one where it's like, you got to swim to the bottom of this lake, and you got to get this special little flower, and that'll let you live forever. And he makes it halfway and gets the flower, but then he can't hold on, gets to the top, he's like, fuck, I can't do this. And he fails at everything. And then he gets home. He's like, I'm just going home because I failed at everything. And then he gets home, and as he gets over this one sand dune, he sees his kingdom that he left because he's like, this place sucks. And he sees it, and he starts to cry. And he goes, this place is amazing. I can't believe that it's mine. And he goes back to his castle, and he's happier than he's ever been his whole life. And he dies a happy man. And he didn't get anything that he wanted. I'm going to cry after that. And I thought, oh, this is my life. Like, I will continue to fail at the thing that I want the most, and there's something quite beautiful about that. And that's how I see these characters in these movies, is that they really want something impossible, whether it's a show at the Rivoli, or to make a real school shooting movie, or to fake the moon landing, or to invent a smartphone. And they fail so badly because they just don't have it. Like, they just don't have the thing that you would need to really do it, but it's okay. You know, like there's something beautiful that they tried. Yeah. So that's why.
I mean, those questions are amazing, and that was such a amazing answer and nice. I guess those 2 pints we had really hit you.
Oh yeah, I drank. What was the beer called?
Oh, we had the Bellhaven Best.
Bellhaven Best.
Yeah.
I only had half a pint, but yeah, it got me. Anyway, if you guys have more questions, because this theater closes, and I experienced this when we did the Blackberry screening, I'm happy to keep talking or take pictures or do anything you want. But we need to go. We need to leave the theater because the staff are quite humorless about what you say.
No, I mean, you know, they just want to get.
No, I'm not trying to disparage
I
them.
know.
Yes. Anyway, thank you so much for coming, and I really appreciate it.
Didn't really have any.